So thank you so much for being here. If you don't know where you are, we this is the community, culture, and change, the resilience of Japantowns in the US session. So yes, that's where you are right now. Um, my name is Scott Oshima. I use they, them, theirs pronouns, and I'll be the moderator. It's been such a joy to get to be part of this group. First, I just want to welcome folks, obviously, to the Asian Pacific Islanders, Americans in historic preservation. Hey, PIAHiP. Hello, you've been here. But also, welcome again. We are on the historic and contemporary Coast Salish lands. And then, of course, we're here in the Chinatown International District. So I work oh, look at my coworkers. I work for For Culture, which is the county here, King County's cultural funding agency. And in my past work, I was also the director of Sustainable Little Tokyo back home in LA, which maybe you've heard a little bit about. You may hear that I have a little bit of a hoarse voice because we were all out singing karaoke. And I was singing Miley Cyrus's Flowers last night. And it's a little gone now. But the idea of this panel was really to bring together our sort of Senate recognized historic Japantowns. So San Francisco, San Jose, and Los Angeles, or Little Tokyo, as Japantowns, to really share a little bit, just a sampling of our history and stories. Obviously, it would be a whole session for each of these to tell the whole story, but really also share about some of the work and the strategies that these folks and organizations and businesses are doing to not only preserve the history and buildings and physical spaces in our historic Japantowns, but really how do we organize and preserve the people, culture, and businesses that really keep these communities alive and full of joy. And so I'm going to introduce our three panelists, starting to your right, Susie Kagami from San Francisco, Japantown, who really organized this panel, is the executive director of KOHO, which is an arts and cultural organization whose mission is to really reconnect and preserve San Francisco Japantown, and emerged out of a lot of the organizing, obviously a lineage of organizing, but the organizing around SF Japantown as one of San Francisco's cultural districts. They've also, right now, are in the midst of 3,000 square foot creative space that they're building out. Also owner, parent to a Shiba Inu, and a human child. And also, and the song that she sang last night was Put Your Records On by Corinne Bailey Ray. Welcome, Susie. Next, we have Jimi Kogura from San Jose, Japantown. Jimi is the fourth generation owner of Kogura Company, a legacy gift and appliance business that opened in 1928 and is one of the oldest businesses still in its original location in any US Japantown. So it's really incredible to carry on that legacy. Jimi's also a coffee snob. Wakes up really early to go on runs. And his first song from last night was Johnny Cash's Ring of Fire. Now we have Kristin Fukushima from LA's Little Tokyo. Is the managing director of Little Tokyo Community Council, which is a nonprofit advocacy organization really fighting for the Little Tokyo community and all of its vested stakeholders. And it is also one of 4 of the organizations in the Sustainable Little Tokyo initiative. Kristin Fukushima is Army. If you don't know what that means, then you don't know what that means. a Dodger fanatic. And Kristin sang Call Me Maybe by Carly Rae Jepsen. All together, the 4 of us sang Sukiyaki last night. So we're so excited to be here. I'm going to invite Susie up here first to really just share some of the ideas and intention of sort of why we were all brought together and present on her work in SF Japantown. Then from Susie, it'll be Jimi and then Kristin, and then we'll have a little discussion afterwards. So thank you and take it away.
All right, who asked Scott to be a part of this panel? No, I'm really glad he's here. He's been our tour guide, host. It's been amazing. So thank you, Scott. Again, my name's Susie. I got to know Hui through a year-long cohort that we were in through Leap Engage, Leap Leadership. And through that year, Hui and I talked preservation, and I was so impressed with him and his vision and his tenacity. And he asked, hey, would you want to put together a panel around Japantown and bringing the 3 Japantowns together? And it's always been a dream of mine for me as a representative of San Francisco Japantown to connect with a younger generation of leaders that are looking at Japantown from a different perspective than some of our elders. And so we've been having a great time, had a few Zoom meetings, and here we are today. So yeah, it's been fun. So anyway, again, at KOHO, I'm the only paid staff, so I will say myself, and my amazing advisory board. We say people are places and places are people. And we look at preservation as a revitalization to look at the future of what our grandchildren's grandchildren will enjoy far, far into the future. We look at evolution, we look at sustainability. And so we're just kind of thinking about preservation a little differently. I'll do a brief history of San Francisco Japantown. So we understand that we are one of the first main immigrant landing points for Japanese in the 1890s. We settled mostly among the water, along with other Asian labor communities. And then the 1906 earthquake happened, leveled San Francisco. And the city government thought all the folks of color should sort of be together. And so they kind of pushed us out of sort of like the city limits. So we are pushed out to the location we are today with the Jewish community, the Black community, and the Filipinos. And so we were once 20 blocks. We were once 20 blocks of Japanese businesses and homes, bustling community. My mother lived on Bush Street. She was 6 years old when, in 1942, we were incarcerated. And 5,200 Japanese immigrants and American-born Japanese were evacuated. We also lost about 200 Japanese businesses through that. Our neighbors did safeguard some of our properties, but you can kind of see where this is a small sampling, but the pink represents the Japanese communities, Japanese residents. The Black dots are the businesses. And so you can see in the 1940s, Japanese in the pink, we were bustling community. And then in 1950, we rebuilt, but obviously we could not afford to return often. And then we were hit again with displacement in the late 1960s and 70s. Redevelopment came in, evicted our community again through eminent domain. A lot of our residents were promised a certificate of preference to return once they rebuilt housing, but guess what? They did not rebuild housing, and the city government lost all the records. But what they did was, instead of rebuilding housing, this is actually, they built a Geary Street corridor, so main transit corridor. They also demolished a lot of what you see as Japantown now, and it sat empty for many, many years after eminent domain. So people were really upset about the process and what happened. So this is what it looks like today. Japantown is most recognizable by the Peace Plaza Pagoda, some of you might know, and a mall and a 9-block commercial corridor. And the mall spans 3 blocks on Post Street, from a hotel to a movie theater. And within those 3 blocks, right now, it's all condominiumized, and there's 11 landowners between those 3 blocks. So developing that into the future is going to really be difficult to get the right leadership and everyone at the table. So what are the challenges today in Japantown? This is nothing new to most of you guys, but our legacy businesses, the next generations aren't taking it over. We don't own property, so some folks are being pushed out by rent control or higher rents in their locations. We also feel like folks are moving in, for other API communities, which is great. But how authentic are we going to be if we're called Japantown? How are we going to stay relevant and authentic? I really don't want Japantown to be known just for ramen, matcha, and plushies. I really want people to understand what are our cultures? How do we look at that? How do we define that? Also, what is the succession of our leadership going forward? Many of our young leaders have been not nurtured by our elders. There hasn't been a succession plan in place for some of our nonprofit and community organizations. And also, we're losing them to tech and other, other very influential occupations that, provide a lot more benefits to them than nonprofits, as you might know. So KOHO was envisioned 10 years ago through town halls and arts and culture, through town halls and the ability for arts and culture to really sustain Japantown into the future. And so KOHO had an opportunity to actually be birthed through the process of the pandemic. And so we thought, how are we going to breathe new life into Japantown? And so during the pandemic, we did look at KOHO and what that looked like, and worked with some of the, we were all at home, so we did a lot of Zoom meetings with artists and creators, and what does that look like to sustain us into the future? And we created KOHO, which is Dynamic and Multidisciplinary Culture Nonprofits Arts Org, for the development developed for and by artist creators located in Japantown. And at this time, we were just kind of an organization forming. We had a long-term strategic plan, but we weren't quite, we didn't know what our resources would be going forward. But we knew we had a mission. And so as Rita Sawa said, art is a powerful tool for social change, and it's really challenges us to think differently how arts and culture can really change a community. So we started looking at what would bring new energy to our district. Japan has a really great soft culture. You'll see everybody kind of wearing t-shirts with kanji, and people really love Japan. Right now, so many of my friends are traveling there. It's really accessible. So what is the exciting parts of Japanese and Japanese culture that we can kind of bring in to refresh Japantown and bring in a new audience? So I love this image because this is an actual collaboration between Adidas and a kimono maker. And they did a whole line of clothing. And it just, it tells me that, there's a lot of potential here to kind of look at things differently. Actually, let me go back to, a couple of the missions of Japantown and KOHO, really KOHO, is to bring back Japanese to Japantown, safe and providing welcoming space, and provide education through immersive events that really talk about authenticity and who we are today. So kind of looking at this picture too, it's we are now 3- and 4th-generation Japanese Americans. We also have a number of native Japanese that are kind of involved in our community. And, how do we get those folks together and kind of have conversations to really look at what Japantown looks like for our future? So through many conversations, we really feel like it's a multi-generational responsibility to inspire our community, harness community activation, come together and really encourage the next generation to find our leaders and stakeholders for our future. So when we were developing KOHO, we're like, what's the best way to get folks involved? And I'll just mention a little bit about our logo here. So KOHO, there's two ways to write it in kanji, and one means mountain peak. So really to bring back the Japanese and Japanese Americans to our community. And the other is public relations. So therefore it's the circle to kind of let people know what we're up to. So after we developed KOHO and kind of the mission of, really supporting and nurturing this next generation, what's the best way to get kind of young people together? And it's really to throw a big party. So we did that, and actually, city government gave us money to do that. They said you have 6 weeks to throw a party, and we're like, okay, let's go. So we did that, and we didn't do a lot of publicity. We really looked at like how to bring back folks. So we had 14 entrepreneurs, entertainers, and live painters and creators that were all Japanese American, and vendors, packaged food, and threw a big party in the mall. And we had 1,200 people show up. And we had folks leave this party in this kind of younger age group saying they were crying, and they were like, we've never really felt welcomed in the community, and where we could kind of be ourselves and express ourselves. So we thought, okay, we're onto something. So then we threw a big obon, and we thought, okay, let's have an obon festival, but let's turn it on its head a little bit. Let's take the tradition, and a lot of folks we heard, we want to honor our ancestors. We kind of want to figure out what this is, but we're not part of the Buddhist church. So we threw a all welcoming, like no connection to any religious tie. We just thought, okay, this is a way to amplify our history and our culture in a way that welcomes everybody. But we did things a little differently. We started doing J-pop and K-pop songs. It's all run by a really young group of planners. We have a yukata remix program, contest, you wear your yukata a little differently. So I hiked mine up with a mini skirt and cowboy boots last year. And it gave license to this younger generation of leaders to actually feel like they have a say and a plan and a purpose within Japantown. And we're in our 3rd year. We had it at the Peace Plaza at the Pagoda, but right now it's under construction. We had 250 people come to our first one, and we just had this one a few weeks ago, and we had 2,100 people come from the city, outer Bay Area. And so it was really, really great. And so part of our 3-year strategic plan was to have a space and a welcoming space for all. And after years of kind of knocking on, this used to be Union Bank, but Union Bank was purchased by US Bank. And so there was a space here that was sitting empty for 5 years. And we kept kind of knocking down on the door, trying to see who we could get information from to actually occupy it. And all the stars aligned earlier this year, and it was donated to Japantown Cultural District, who donated it to us to run for 2 years rent-free. So we've been doing some improvements. We just opened it at the end of June. We had Seiji Oda, who's a young Japanese rapper, come in as our event opener, and it was great. We had 150 people in there. Everyone had a great time. We had live tattooing going on. It really was the event to bring folks back to Japantown in a way that we've been planning. And through that, it's been a community space. Organizations have been renting it from us. We've been doing our own programming. But what's amazing about this is we are on space it's like a bit of reclaiming, right? This was property and land that was taken from us. And so I'm going to do all my effort to try and keep this within a community space. So, and hopefully maybe find ways to buy it. So the Co-Creative Hub, the purpose of it is to build collective wisdom between generations, incubate it, and do innovative programming, and really nurture this younger generation of belonging and well-being. So one of a very recent program that we just did about a month ago was a summer intern capstone project. And we wanted to break open the conversations that our communities have been really not so keen on talking about. KOHO has the opportunity to heal our community by opening these opportunities to have tough conversations. And one of them was about redevelopment. We have a lot of elders in our community that lived through the experience, but there's so much bitterness and hurt and anger towards the city that it's been a tough conversation. And so KOHO, kind of thinking about it in a new perspective, is like, to nurture our next generation, they have to kind of know what we were about, what happened in our community, so that they can create art, so that we can share sort of healing opportunities. And so this event was storytelling from some of the folks that lived through the redevelopment evacuation, activists, residents, and then we had a bunch of young storytellers and poets come in and talk about everything from them not knowing the stories from their elders and how that has affected them today, or activists conversations about redevelopment or displacement that they know of. So it was a really great intergenerational event. The other thing that KOHO's kind of diving into right now is looking at, based on redevelopment, the certificate of preference program and working with redevelopment. Yeah, so you can see in the picture there, this is in the 60s, where we had our Japanese and African-American communities come together. But KOHO's kind of diving into looking at records, certificate of programs, and looking for those families that were displaced. And so we look at KOHO today, and like, we have such an opportunity. We have a lot of work to do, but we're excited to bring in a new generation to help us heal our community, and through arts and culture and activations, really make a big difference for our future. Thank you. And next, I will bring up Jimi Kogura.
Thank you. All right, thank you, everybody. Looks like more people than I expected, because I thought everyone was going to go see the movie, but it's all good. Yeah, thank you. I actually bought a ticket to the movie and I couldn't go see it, so oh well. I have to be real. I was the backup plan for this. There's actually supposed to be another badass here. These two ladies are amazing. Getting to know them over the last couple of months has been really cool. They actually asked another person, and she was like, "Yo, Jimi, can you get over there?" I'm like, I'll do anything for you. So yeah. So yeah, again, my name's Jimi. I'm from San Jose's Japantown. My family's owned our business since 1928. Have to correct Scott a little bit. We moved in 19. Oh, okay. So here's our agenda. It's gonna be pretty quick. Just gonna basically be about just my Japantown in general. It's not so much the preservation, but I'll try to that in. So it's going to have family, community, and we'll walk through. So I'm guessing, has anybody been to San Jose's Japantown? Okay, that's a lot more than I expected. So this is cool. Okay, cool. This is rad. All right, so this is my family. We just took this picture a couple of months ago, and I have to be honest again. Really, it's only my auntie right here. She's the main person who runs our store. She's been running our store for the last 20 something years. She sacrificed a lot. I get kind of emotional. But yeah, like she's definitely putting a lot of like hard work and dedication to this. There's my dad and my mom to the right of her, my Uncle Bob, and then my two sisters and my Uncle Glenn. My Uncle Glenn used to work at our store with my grandpa and his dad, who was also a co-owner of Japantown. This is a picture when we first moved into our current location in 1936. The panels, actually, we still have those there. So if you walk by, it's pretty cool. It hasn't been replaced yet. We still have our original sign. We just kind of changed it up a little bit because obviously we don't sell the radio anymore. But oh, okay. I should point out who some people are. This is my great grandpa Kohei Kogura. He was actually the first person, or he's the person who was able to buy the property and ran the store for basically until he died. We're still trying to figure out how he got the money to open up the shop and buy the property. And actually, that's a luxury that we have. And in Japantown in general, with owning the property is a big thing because then we don't have to pay anybody to or pay the rent. Obviously, that's a huge thing. So we'll go on. Oh, and I should point out my grandpa. He's right there with the goofy face. All right, and this is a couple more pictures from back in the day. We have my great grandpa Kohei and our family. There's my granddad, and this is Kohei in the shop selling a few items. Let's see here, and this is from about my niece is 12, so that's 12 years ago. This is grandpa, grandma, our representative Honda from longtime representative for San Jose. This is some more pictures actually from the San Jose High yearbook. And this is my dad pretending that he actually worked at the store. He's never worked at the store before, but I will give him credit. We started making pins and they're pretty dope. So give him credit for that. There's my Auntie Patty right here. She passed away a few years ago. Super awesome lady. And these are just some items in the store that we have. Actually, this one is not in the store. We just sold it 2 weeks ago. And it was really cool just to walk in every day. I would love looking at that. Not every day, but when I would go in and I'd look at it and be inspired. So when a family came in and they saw it, I was just so happy and geeked out when they bought it because I knew it was going to go to a good place. It's more little pictures around our store. Pretty much it's great to hear when people come through and they just go, oh, it hasn't changed. Yeah, it really hasn't changed. We try to keep things original. Let's see here. Scott pointed out my coffee snobness. It ended up turning into this. I reached out to his Hario coffee drippers and I was like, hey, how can we get this in our store? And they're like, oh, for sure. So we ended up selling some of those. So it's pretty sweet. Let's see here. This is me with my grandma who passed away about earlier this year. 97 years old, I think. Yeah, pretty old. But she's a wonderful lady. We actually got to go, or her favorite thing to do was go to Vegas and gamble. So, I mean, she would just sit there pressing the button. It was a blast. I got to go with her a couple of times to grandma's it and give her cash to put in. And here's our sign lit up at night. It was that's something cool if you walk around San Jose Japantown at night. We actually have quite a bit of neon signs that are lighted up the town. So, yep, another cool thing. We actually got that. Let's see. We actually got our sign fixed after the pandemic. It was a good time to renovate a little bit. And it was really funny because a lot of people go, I never seen this sign before. Well, it used to be brown. And then we decided to paint it blue and get that lit up again. So it's a nice little upgrade for us. Next thing I'm going to go through is community. These are things that I kind of do in our community other than just work at the store. And I have to be honest, I work at the store Saturdays or I'll randomly go in a couple of the other days to help out with my auntie. So our big thing that we have every year, Susie mentioned this, Obon, and I'm glad San Francisco's doing it, but San Jose's Obon is actually one of the biggest festivals that we have going on in basically all of San Jose. It's a great celebration, and my dad and we help run the tempura booth, and so this is, my friends must hate me, but yep, these are all my friends. They have to get roped in every year and help not get burned by the hot oil, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. You could tell that there's a lot of people here just getting food, dancing. I have to do a little bit of a humble brag. We have like tens of thousands of people that come throughout the 2 days, and it's just a really cool event. Let's see here. Oh, yep. Here's some more pictures of us doing our community thing. You can see my pops right here. And let's see, we got all our friends, goofy faces. All right. And this is another thing that I've been doing over the last couple of years. I've been helping out at the farmers market. And actually, the person who was supposed to be here, Tomiko Rast, she's the one who runs it. It's a volunteer-based farmers market. We we recognized that when we had a private company running it, they weren't really promoting it. And once we took it over 2 years, or yeah, last year, the vibes changed. It's been great. We've had more vendors come through, more people staying longer and buying more. I don't know if y'all been to a farmer's market with a DJ, but we have a DJ that comes every week, so it's really cool. There's a couple of the other a few of the other volunteers right here. One of our main jobs is watching dogs, which is great. Let's see. My main job, or one of my main jobs, is washing tables. So that's just one of the things that I do for the farmers market. Right. Now, I wish I didn't do this because now I've seen everybody basically came through San Jose's Japantown, but I was going to take you through a walkthrough of Japantown. This is the church that was built in 1930, I think it was in 1932 was when the church was built. And this is it today. It's super pretty. It's cool. The reverends are really sweet. A lot of community, like a lot of people who attend the church. I've attended the church. You know, it's basically like a hub for San Jose. It's kind of the focal point of like where our community started and where we meet. Yeah, since y'all been to Japantown, like you know it's not very big. It's only about a couple blocks. So that's one thing, I guess, perspective-wise, comparatively for LA and San Francisco, it's like we have a small little area and it's not as big. And so that's where we're actually kind of fortunate, where we can like do a lot of things. This is one of the new businesses that just opened up. It's a smog checking spot. One of the other volunteers that I showed you earlier, he actually opened this up. It was weird. He was 6 months ago, he said, "Hey, I have an idea to open a smog shop." And then today it's like open. And I was like, wow, that's super cool. So he's running that. A smog shop? Oh, okay. It's so in California, your cars were dirty. Yeah, so you need to get your smog checked. Yeah, to be compliant. um, yeah, for cars. Yeah, not for people. um, let's see a few other things. Yeah, we got some artwork here throughout Japantown. I wanted to highlight this business right here. It's used to be an old Chinese restaurant. They didn't change any of the outside once they left, and it became a barbershop. It's a black-owned barbershop, and what's really cool is the owner, he started doing his own, or he actually started a barber school on the top. So really cool. Let's see. A couple of more artwork here. I wanted to highlight these two spots. This is where I get my haircut, Mr. and Mrs. And this is one of the solid places of a restaurant. Let's see. Oh, okay, this is cool. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. So this is Roy's Coffee, and it used to be an old gas station. The family that owns this spot, the Rast family, Japantown wouldn't be what it is today without them. Now I'm getting emotional again. Exactly how cool they are. So when you walk through Japantown, it's like kind of spotless. Like you don't see any trash anywhere. That's because every morning this family wakes up and sweeps the streets of Japantown. And when I heard that, I was like, wow, that's crazy. So if you see me like walking around and I pick up trash, that's exactly why. Let's see more stuff here. This is like one of our entry gateways to Japantown with their logos. This is really cool monument that we have. If you notice that there's a little bend right there, it's supposed to mark when the Japanese were interned. And then this goes up and that lights up at night to show like where we're going into the future. So cool little thing that was just it's been there. Yeah, Japantown, we have a pizza spot. Who knew? It's a really cool little spot to grab drinks, grab food, yada yada. Let's see. All right, this is a cool like spot right here. This is like basically, in my opinion, what Japantown. We got Shuedo right there. That's a manju shop. I always tell people you have to go get manju, which is like a little sweet treat. Then right here is a tattoo shop. It's a world-renowned tattoo shop called State of Grace, and they moved in about 22 years ago. And it was interesting. My grandpa, when they first moved in, I thought, oh man, this dude is not going to like it. He actually befriended the owner of the tattoo shop and they became buddies, and it was kind of cool. Like every now and then the dude would just come through and buy us some burgers and stuff. So maybe that's why my grandpa liked him. Let's see. Okay, so this is the manju, all handmade by the same family. Had to highlight all of it. This is the tattoo shop State of Grace. Yeah, you know, you can look past that. One thing that's really cool that's being done is this Monmon cat thing by Horitomo right here. And basically what he's trying to do with the Monmon cats is to, well, okay, see, that's what you say that. And so it's not so much the Yakuza, like we're trying to get past that, because there's a lot of negative connotations to tattooing. So by doing the tattooing with cats on it, it kind of blends like the you can actually see the art more. Because like, right, we look at this, you see his butt. But if you take away that, you can actually see like the beauty of the artwork. Let's see. Okay, so one thing about Japantown too, it's not just about being Japanese. We've really embraced trying to incorporate a lot of other ethnicities and recognizing that, you know, Japantown only became Japantown for us after Chinatown got burned down in 1890. So that's what kind of like gave way to having Japantown come through. And so we try to recognize that, hey, you know, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for other cultures or just even luck. I guess I should, Kukui, I don't know if y'all have heard of Kukui. It's a t-shirt brand, and the owner is super cool, Orly. I think he's Polynesian descent, so really rad. Have to highlight our favorite eating spot, Minato's. That's where we usually get dinner on Saturday nights. And this Pauhana shaved ice, they just opened up shop within the last couple of years, and it's been a huge increase or pleasantry for our Japantown. This is another old market, Santo Market, ran by Mark right here. Had to recognize, and I was pointing out, yeah, we can't have Japantown without recognizing all the other cultures. So when a couple of artists came through, they tried to go to the Filipino Center around the corner and asked if they could make a mural. The Filipino Center told them no. And so they came to our store and they asked us, hey, can we do this mural? We're like, yeah, well, why not? And it's cool to see Pinoy Town, where it used to be, and it being recognized on our shop, and seeing a lot of people like actually look at the mural and go, oh, wow, I didn't even know Pinoy Town was in San Jose or a part of San Jose. So it's a nice little historical feature that's also art. Let's see, we got the Japanese American Museum, and coffee snob, had to do a coffee, even though I don't usually drink any coffee with cream, but it looked so pretty. I had to take a picture and throw it in. Oh, and I guess I should mention the guy who made this is another small business owner who's trying to start another coffee shop in San Jose. Brian, really cool dude. Him and his girlfriend are wonderful people, and they have good positive energy. Let's see. Okay, so here's the monument at night, lit up. You could see it. Actually, really cool. My uncle and his wife donated money in order to get the light fixture or the lighting back up. So really nice of them. And here's the J-Town Pizza. We're an old Chinese restaurant, used to be, again, another Chinese restaurant. And we tried to keep the structure just so, for the historical purposes. And yeah, that's my presentation. Thank you very much. I'd like to introduce Kristin Fukushima. Also, this is weird because I thought I was going to sing with this microphone.
Instead of Q&A, we'll sing. Oh, yeah, thank you. Okay, great. Well, thank you, Jimmy and Susie and Scott. All right, I have over ambitiously prepared too many slides, so I'm just gonna run through this and see what happens. But hello, my name is Kristin Fukushima. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm with the Little Tokyo Community Council. Down is forward. Great, okay. So yes, Little Tokyo this year is 140. We are one of the oldest neighborhoods in LA. That is because LA loves to destroy neighborhoods. So that has sadly bumped us up towards the top. So I always actually use the example of LA's Chinatown. The original one was destroyed to build Union Station. So people often say New Chinatown because it was rebuilt in the 20s. So I use that often as an example of how our Little Tokyo has sort of crept its way to the top, unfortunately. But I think the way we count our Japantowns is getting harder and harder, especially with seeing so many Japantowns across the country really going through revitalization efforts right now. I know in Denver and Salt Lake City and Fresno and Sacramento, et cetera, a lot of folks are really working on their Japantown projects. So I think the way Scott described it as the California Senate recognized ones is a good way to maybe talk about the three. I do always say four just because we have Sawtell and they get mad if we don't include them. So, and Sawtell, little LA politics there. Let's see here. So LA, as we talked about in the opening plenary with other Kristin, we have been through a lot of waves of encroachment and displacement. That includes, of course, incarceration, pre-incarceration, because of the fire and earthquake in San Francisco. A lot of folks came down the coast to LA, and that made LA become the largest concentration of folks of Japanese descent in the country. And then, of course, with World War II, everyone was incarcerated. Little Tokyo itself was not actually empty during that time. It became known as Bronzeville. There is a lot of history on that as a Black space in LA. And when we talk about things like Central Street Jazz, a lot of that history is connected back to Little Tokyo, where the museum is, that is on Central. So that is part of that history. Folks like Miles Davis and Charlie Parker performed and lived in Little Tokyo. And then post-war with resettlement, we continue to see more encroachment with the Civic Center. When the city decided to expand its footprint from where City Hall is, they eminent domained land from Little Tokyo to do that Civic Center expansion. So we talk about that as our 50s encroachment. In the 70s and 80s, we saw urban renewal and redevelopment. And while there's some things that were really beneficial for the community that came out of it, they also, for a very long time, took the approach of, well, all of these things are blighted, we need to tear them down. But of course, there were people inside of those buildings, from small businesses to residents. I think this is a very common history we hear across all of our ethnic enclaves. I think sometimes we're so focused on our own neighborhood, we don't realize this is a pattern happening across all of our communities. And that's both very telling and very sad. But I think that what I appreciate about for Little Tokyo is the folks that did that work to fight redevelopment, and they were also coming up through the Asian American movement. A lot of them have stuck around in Little Tokyo all this time. So folks like myself have really benefited from the mentorship of these Asian American movement activists who have just been doing the work for 50 years and then really mentoring and bringing those teachings onto the next generation. Let's see here, is this working? Oh boy. Okay. Little Tokyo, of course, used to be much larger than it currently is. We usually say back in the day, it used to be about 10 square blocks. So if you are familiar with LA, We kind of say like you used to go about to the river, down to 10th Street or Olympic, and then up towards the 101, and then through, of course, incarceration. And then also once the, people were allowed to live in other places, there was no longer racial covenants on land or redlining. And a lot of folks moved out. We saw all these different reasons for Little Tokyo getting smaller, and then of course redevelopment. So today that is not even our real boundary because it is a lot more jagged than that. And boundaries are not real. They're just lines on a map. But I think for us, we say we're about like 2.5 square blocks roughly. And we are, I think I've heard folks say like, oh, Little Tokyo, it's just a tourist trap. We're like, no, that is very rude. We are a real community. And it is really the home, I consider the home for Southern California of the Japanese American community, and a lot of folks call Little Tokyo home as well. It's a place for religion. We have our churches and temples, a place where people come together for community, for a celebration, for festival, all of these different things. Yes, this slide. So we have roughly 400 businesses. I think we usually approximate about half of them are small businesses. I think it's like 75 restaurants, 60 retail, a number of other things, different professional services. We have so many nonprofits. I just put 50 plus because it's really hard to count them. Some of them don't have brick and mortar. So it's like, how do we count them? Sometimes I say 100. I don't know. We are rich in nonprofits. And we have about 5,000 residents. This is really low, and it actually has doubled since 2000. So around the turn of the century, we were around more like 2,000, 2,500. And then the reason it has doubled is because we've seen a lot of market rate residentials come in. So I'd say 25 years ago, we were primarily a low-income senior community when it comes to residents. And now we have more market rate residential units than low income. So that's a big change for our neighborhood. This says 8 faith organizations. It is sadly down to 7 because Joroshu moved out, I think, last year. But we have 4 Buddhist temples, 3 Buddhist temples, 4 Buddhist temples, and 2 Christian churches and 1 Catholic church. We have the last remaining Japanese Catholic church in the country. And yes, we are a place of a lot of small businesses, of different arts and culture. We define arts and culture in a very broad way, from food to business to the traditional arts and modern arts, etc. And I will just say, like, I think arts and culture is really fundamental for Little Tokyo. It's a really big core foundation of who we are as a neighborhood. And of course, we've been going through a lot of changes. So in the sea of changes that we have been experiencing, I'd say the last 25, we've really been talking about gentrification. When I first got involved in Little Tokyo in 2007, all we talked about was gentrification, and people at that time weren't as familiar with the term. And so we'd have to explain to people this is what gentrification is. Now it's a word that everyone knows across the country. It's become so mainstream and commonplace to talk about. But what I was told when I first got involved with the neighborhood is that a lot of the gentrification was first tied to, well, 2 things. One, the Staples Center, now known as Crypto.com or the Crypt, when they did the Staples Center LA Live redevelopment, it really brought in a lot of changes in downtown. So we saw some of those in Little Tokyo. Why is my mic going out? Maybe I'll just keep it going. And then also the Metro started the Gold Line project, or a new train project in Little Tokyo. So we saw a lot of property turnover in the mid 2000s. And then, of course, when I got involved, they had just started to finish building the Gold Line and said, we're now planning a new rail line, the regional connector. And I talked about this yesterday, but I will just say it again. When they first planned it, they were planning to do it above ground. We actually used San Francisco as an example of when they built the major highway there, and it really divided and split up the community. We use that as the example of that's what we don't want to happen to Little Tokyo. If you run a train down 2nd Street or kind of a middle corridor, it will forever split up and break up that neighborhood. So we were able to convince Metro to make an all underground project. LTCC really played a role in helping fight for that. But we knew that even with all the mitigations we got, it would really forever change the neighborhood. And of course, we have seen, now that it is finally open, we have seen all those impacts really come to bear. So yes, just really quickly about legacy businesses. We have 51 remaining legacy businesses left. For Little Tokyo, we define that as 20 years or older in Little Tokyo. So if you're 100, but you moved to Little Tokyo, we're like, oh, you just started, sorry. But so 20 years in Little Tokyo. And I think the other thing we'd like to point out is that we have lost over 50 businesses in over the last 10 years that were 50 businesses that were over 10 years old in the last 15 years. So this number of, we have 51 legacy businesses would of course be a lot higher if we hadn't been seeing so many disappear. And this is a screenshot from the Little Tokyo Historical Society's website. We love LTHS, one of our organization's best friends. And yes, we're selling 140. So I think the reason we've been really hyping 140, I know it's kind of a random number, but I think we think about how it takes work to get here, right? You do not become 140 by accident. It takes active community work and dedication and commitment for generations and generations to get here. As we've seen in LA, we've lost so many spaces or places have moved. And I think you just can't take things for granted. Like, although we're already starting to talk about 150, I think that means we are actively working to fight to be here in 10 more years and then another 140 years. If you go to that QR code, it takes you to our website and you can learn more history about Little Tokyo. And we recently celebrated our 140th with LTHS, our Little Tokyo best friend. At Nisei, we had the closing Ondo. We did these streamers. I forgot that they would land on everyone and everyone had to help us clean it up. It was great. And as you all know, we are on the NTHP's list of 11 most endangered places this year. And I think that I talked about this yesterday, but we keep being asked, like, why did you want to do this? And again, it really is just like a flag in the air that we're waving of Little Tokyo is still in danger. I think when you walk around, there's so many people there on the weekends, and that is really great. And also we want to make sure that they are joining us in the fight for Little Tokyo's future and not just here as like a fun neighborhood to visit, to take advantage of, shop, patronize, and then go home. Part of the challenges that we are dealing with right now, we are finding major developments. Like there is a project called the 4th and Central Cold Storage Project. I don't have a slide on it, so I'll just talk about it quickly. It is 1.5 blocks. It is 10 different buildings. They range from 1 story to 44 stories. It is a $2 billion project and is right next to Centenary United Methodist Church and the Galleria. And although it's not directly displacing anything in Little Tokyo, it will be a catalytic, transformative project that will forever change the neighborhood and all the areas around it. It also does not really fit in with the neighborhood. And the 44-story tower is right next to Little Tokyo, and that is a lot taller than the 2-story building next to it. We are really trying to do something about that. Now that we have the regional connector open, Metro is proposing yet another Metro line because 3 projects in 30 years makes sense for Metro, but very hard for our neighborhood. We're also still seeing, now that the regional connector is open, it is continuing to invite in a lot of speculation, a lot of new developers, just a lot of people looking to cash out and benefit from the regional connector, but they don't really come in necessarily with a care for the community itself. And that means we're seeing the displacement of our small businesses. And I would just say in general, as a community that is this old is changing, we're really thinking about what is that future? What is the succession? I think that's a common thread across our 3 Japantowns. Okay, very quickly about my organization. I think when I think about Little Tokyo, I think about the ways we constantly try to respond to the different threats. LTCC, one of the co-founders, Bill, hello Bill, it really came out of this idea that Little Tokyo is the bigger picture. The story that I was told is when Office Depot moved into Little Tokyo back in 1999, everyone, oh my God, how did this happen? Did you know about this? And they really realized that it's important for our community to talk to each other, to communicate, to coordinate, and to try to be on the same page. Not necessarily saying that we all have to get along or like be on the same page about things, but we at least have to recognize that we are in community with each other and have to work together. So it originally started as just a forum of like, let's have conversations, let's share information, do more pipelining of information out to the broader community. And then as things happened, like the city tried to build a jail in Little Tokyo, for example, it quickly became a place where we can also organize, mobilize, and then really advocate and speak with one voice as a neighborhood. So our mission is to protect, promote, and preserve Little Tokyo. And we still have so many meetings. We have too many meetings. And then we also do, we really try to make the space for community process and decision-making. So it takes a very long time and the conversations go on for years. It's a very circular, horizontal process. But the hope is by the end of the day or by the end of the decision, even if the person, like your own personal preference is not the final decision because you are part of it and you got to have a voice in it, by the end of the day, you were able to say like, well, I understand how we got here. I might not agree, but at least I was part of it and I can see your perspective and I am okay with us moving forward because we are part of a collective decision-making process. And I think something that we try to be good at is speaking with one voice and looking united to the public, putting up a facade of like, yeah, we all stand together, even if maybe behind closed doors we're like, oh, this person. But at least to the city or to Metro, we're like, yes, Little Tokyo is united and you cannot divide and conquer us. Yes, so we also just do a lot of like planning things, a lot of cute things. And so some of our areas, I will not talk through all this, but yes, we deal with metro projects, development projects, streetscaping. We talk about like trees a lot. And when I was younger, I was like, why are we talking about trees? And then you realize if you plant the wrong tree, you have to deal with it for 25 years. So talking about trees is actually really important. And I would just say like our big value is self-determination and community control. Whether it's our project or someone else's project, we want a seat at the table. So if an outside developer comes in or if a metro agency comes in, we're like, that's great that this is your project, your idea, but this is our community and our neighborhood, and we have to deal with the consequences of whatever you do here. So we are going to have a seat at your table, and we are going to tell you what we want. And if you don't want that, then we will fight you and force you into it. So that's really our approach is bullying. Yes, great, all those things. And so I think when I think about the big challenges, I think one thing we've identified is that our small businesses are most at risk. We have unfortunately lost so many of our residential buildings over the years, back in the 70s and 80s, that the remaining affordable housing is fairly protected. Little Tokyo Service Center owns a lot of it and protects them. So shout out LTSC, we love you a lot too. But that does mean, and then I think for cultural and community and social power, we have all those 100 organizations. So we have a pretty good strength there. But I think with our, unlike San Jose, Japantown, we largely don't own our own land, which means that we are really susceptible to the market, to real estate speculators coming in, to now private equities entering things and buying up things. And so we really focus on supporting small businesses through Go Little Tokyo. You can follow us on Instagram and learn more about our work there. And we throw parties. Everyone is throwing parties. Great job, us. And marketing and social media. Great. I'm just trying to flip through this now. And Sustainable Tokyo, made up of 4 organizations: Japanese American Culture and Community Center, Little Tokyo Service Center, Little Tokyo Community Council, and Japanese American National Museum. This started in 2012 after we finished fighting and yelling with Metro over the regional connector. And we said, great that we got mitigations. It's going to change everything. How can we really plan out a future for ourselves? So this was actually it's building off the years of preservation work that folks have already done. But I think when we talked about preservation in the past, people are like, oh, if you want to trap yourself in amber, you don't want to change, you just want to be stagnant. We're like, no, we just want to survive. Like, we just want to be here in the future. So we started to say we want to sustain Little Tokyo for future generations. So that is Sustainable Tokyo. It is inherently a preservation project, but with a new approach and a new lens to it. So our 3 pillars of sustainability are cultural and historic, economic, and environmental. And the way it started is we said, well, we can't do a lot about private land. We are not super rich, but we do have this publicly owned, or we have publicly owned undeveloped parcels of land. And so we can build out our vision there. So we did, let's see, 2012 is when we started, 2013 is when we did our visioning, 2014 is when we published. We have since then done so many revisions and updates, it goes on forever. And we have, I think I mentioned this yesterday, but we broke ground on First Street North, and that's very exciting. And we are still working to get the other 2, and I think we are almost there. But this is just about the campaign. I'm not going to cover this, but I think I show this because it takes a long time to get things done. And when I started working in Little Tokyo 15 plus years ago, I just thought things would happen. And then I realized that it actually takes many, many years. I think the Budokan took 30 or 50 years, depending on who you talk to, of how long that project took. So I think it's actually kind of a miracle that First Street North only took 10. And we broke ground in February. That's very exciting. And I'm super out of time. I'm so sorry, Scott. And so I will just end with, I think part of our strength is our resiliency. Little Tokyo is full of very stubborn people, and we are stubborn and proud. And part of it is just we are stubborn about our neighborhood and we love it. And so we are fighting for its future. And again, I'm so sorry, I really went over time, but thank you.
Now we'll have we had a couple questions to have a discussion, but I'm just going to do one of them. And I'm going to combine one of them to close this out. And this is actually a great image to have up behind us. This is just fine. So, you know, as many of us know here, obviously, as you heard, there's a lot of parallels in our history, not only of the history of displacement and erasure, but also the history of activism and community organizing and fighting and building physical space. But really, like when we think about historic preservation, which is why we're here, we keep talking about, many people think about, right, beautiful buildings, historic buildings, why they're important to experience and feel and be in the spaces where history happened. But we also think about preservation in each of the ways that we all talked about it here as it looking very different, that sometimes it could be literally the ondo dancing at obons and the festivals in the street. It could be, these local families who are literally sweeping the streets to keep them clean every day. And our, gambling grandmas at the local small businesses. And also the fight for new physical space, which we are all, in the Sustainable Tokyo vision and KOHO's longer term plans and vision, and then holding on to legacy businesses. So I'm curious, just, very briefly, when we think about preservation in each of your communities and work, how do you really define it? How does your community define and do preservation work?
I will start, like, again, you can talk about preservation of places and buildings and monuments, but it's really the people that, bringing back the people of our community is super important. In the, not this past census, but the census before, folks that were recognized as, or, identified as Japanese was just 1% of San Francisco. And we're 5% landowners within our own community, our cultural district. And when we survey younger people, land control is so important. If we have more land control, whether it be a community land trust, whether we purchase buildings, whether it be housing, if we had more control, we would have more say at the table. And so I think that's one thing that we think about in preservation. And other than that, it's just building community, bringing people back, finding a way to build our stakeholders for our future.
Yeah, for preserving Japantown in San Jose, I'm going to mimic what Susie just said. It's pretty much the people. Got to focus on the people, not so much it being like what you want it to be. As long as people are happy, as long as we keep a good, I would say vibe is the word going around. And also, just making sure like certain cultural aspects continue, like the Bonodori dancing. I'll keep saying manju for the rest of my life because I really hope that family stays there and keeps selling it, because like I'll tell people, why did you come to Japantown if you're not going to get manju? But yeah, just like the few little things.
And if you go to Shuedo, you have to get there 15 minutes before they open or they will sell out. I talked about preservation a bit in my slide, so I'll just add that I think in addition to the tactics that I just talked about, we also are really lucky to have Little Tokyo Historical Society, who take a really important approach of also just like marking things. So we have a lot of physical markers now, plaques, statues, etc., to really mark things. And then the use of public art, like if you're ever in Little Tokyo on First Street, if you look down, there is a historic timeline. So I think we're really looking at it from a variety of things, from people to building new things to protecting what we have, to also just trying to uplift history and stories and all of that. So yes.
Oh, I feel like I like the idea of changing it from preservation to preserving the vibe. It's just we're vibe keeping. Okay. So another thing that I heard come up is really the history of our Japantowns forming out of, right, this really racist environment. It's one of the few places where people of color could live. And so our Japantowns have, never really ever been just strictly Japanese American. They've been really historic communities of color. I think we talked about these intersections. I think Chinatown International District is a clear example of that. And so when we think about like who is the community, I've seen in some of my past work in Little Tokyo really this, increasing discomfort in how we include folks like unhoused folks who live in our communities, our lower income residents, but also a lot of work to really build bridges and build solidarity. I think we've been hearing throughout this forum about the need to build those bridges and support one another. And that includes both the folks in our community, but also our neighbors and folks across the country. And so I'm very curious, just from each of your perspectives, how does your community really define itself? Who do you feel like has been left out of these conversations? And, how does your work really, work to include those voices, all the voices of our Japantowns?
So I think it's I don't know, I just started going to or volunteering at the farmers market, and just doing that simple thing of being at the farmers market and seeing all the people that come through, it gives me a bigger or better sense and a bigger perspective of who our constituents are. And it's not just Japanese people, it's from all over walks of life. People that I feel like that are being left out. Currently, we're kind of going through a phase in San Jose where there's a lot of unhoused coming through because Gavin Newsom decided to pass a law basically to sweep everything up. So a lot of these individuals end up coming through our streets, and we're working with the city to try to figure out what we can do. Fortunately, we have a really good, I want to say a strong leader in our mayor, Matt Mahan, who's doing like really great work to try to help this situation. He's opening up different like projects, kind of like there's a San Diego where they're doing a tent city. It sounds bad, but when you think about it, it's actually kind of nice because there's a lot of different, what would you call it? Like a lot of eyes watching it. It's not just setting up tents and no one's taking a look. We're actually looking around, and there's people to keep track of it. So I think that's something that we're dealing with currently, and we're doing our best.
I think this has been an ongoing conversation for Little Tokyo for a very long time. I think that I will say for myself as a mixed race person, part of my like deep interest in Little Tokyo was that I recognized it was a multiracial, multi-ethnic spot. And when I first got involved, it, like I once had a Nisei person be like, people like you are like killing the community. And I was like, well, first of all, you should direct that to my parents. But also just, I think like there was so much fear and concern around that change, and people often see change as loss. But I think that there's always room for opportunity to actually grow. So I think while we are still struggling with that, and yes, when I first got involved, we had a lot of new Korean businesses and residents move in, and there was a big fight in the community about like how people felt about that, which every now and then I do still hear like it pop up. But I also appreciate that Little Tokyo is very Asian American. There's East West Players, there's Visual Communications, there's Tuesday Night Cafe. Our residents are mostly not Japanese. Our business owners are also, I don't know the exact percentage, but there is a lot of probably a majority, right? Non-Japanese owned businesses. And that is not a bad thing, right? Because for me, Little Tokyo is, while it has Japanese, it has roots in Japaneseness, it has also not always been, or it's always been not just Japanese, as Scott said. And I think that's a really important part of our history. So I think one thing we've been doing more is really uplifting the non-Japanese history parts of Little Tokyo so that people really understand that through line from the indigenous folks who were the original caretakers of the land to it being a very Black space. Little Manila was there. All these different communities have called Little Tokyo home, and that we are still here and we've always existed together. So how do we see each other and be more in communication? I think as we look to the future, people feel, again, just like scared, right? They when they talk about this, it's because they feel scared. They're afraid of losing something or losing identity or history. But I do think there is a path for us to all still be our full authentic selves and in community with each other and not lose anything of what makes it feel special to us. So I think we are pushing it, and we are trying to include all those voices. And then, of course, we get pushback and backlash sometimes. But I think that we have to just remind people, like, you're not losing anything by having another person at this table. And of course, we don't want to be not Japanese, right? We still want to maintain something, but there's no use in trying to put a number on it, because what does that number mean? So I think it's just really finding, like, what does home mean? I think for me, Little Tokyo is home, and we can be home for many people. So we just have to keep reminding people they always have a place in this home, and we can just build a bigger home for everyone.
I agree with Kristin. We have our own conversations about this, about succession, about intergenerations. It's funny because KOHO is attracting my team, my advisory board. It's all folks that didn't feel welcome in the community, even though they were Japanese or Japanese American. You get involved with Japantown as a parent, possibly, and you're forced to volunteer and do these things. Or younger folks come in and work at the festivals, and or come in for a craft or a ritual or some kind of tradition. But there's a lot of folks that just want to engage and learn more about their own cultural identity now that we, again, are fourth, fifth generation Americans sometimes, or we're all mixed race at this point. I think KOHO gives an opportunity to really understand what is our cultural identity in San Francisco, Japantown, and how do we redefine that. Another area that I would like to dive into is the LGBT community. We have hardly any folks within our community that have a safe place to engage, to feel comfortable, to be a part of our community, and that's something that we want to open up to as well.
Yes, and I was thinking as we were all talking, I mean, yeah, there's this idea of home, and then yes, as a queer Chinese Japanese American coming into Little Tokyo and feeling so welcomed and so able to be part of that neighborhood. So yeah, very much just a reminder of I think what we're all fighting for. That this idea of historic preservation is also the fight for our homes and a home for everybody. So with that, I wanted to give one more round of applause for our panelists. If we had time, I would have asked, if you could have sang one more song, but at karaoke. But I guess you'll just have to come find us and sing with us later tonight at a Mem's Books.